Welcome, everyone. It's been ages since John Taylor has joined us. What do you have for us today, John?
So we're going to talk about the three agreements of early recovery,
Ooh.
and I'll explain in a minute what that means. But first, I did want to say we're going to have a special enmeshment webinar through Overcoming Enmeshment. We're going to talk about couples, a guide to couples recovery and enmeshment on January 19th. So if you're interested in that, you can pop over to
I'm
overcomingenmeshment.com
gonna,
or
yes, and I'll pull the link while you're talking
perfect.
and put it in the chat but
Yeah.
Overcoming Enmeshment website would have that information. So
Yep.
would
And
be useful to consider if that's a place where you're at.
we are bolstering our offerings for couples next year. So that's our first step in that. So the three agreements of early recovery. This webinar comes out of what I'm noticing. I would say pretty frequently couples in recovery struggling around sobriety plans, definitions, and ultimately deciding like who should be focused, what should we be focused on individually in early recovery. So I'm hoping to define some of these, I would call them pillars of creating safety, accountability, and structure early on. I want to define them. I want to talk about what they're for, what they're not for, and how, like, kind of a crash course in how to craft these agreements. So these agreements, these are what we encounter early in recovery, sobriety, couples work. And the agreements we're going to talk about today are the three circles and sobriety plan, agreements needed for safety and the eventual rebuilding of trust. So, like the safety plan and relationship agreements. We're going to talk about the agreement or commitment. So, I put agreements in quotes because agreement may denote that both of us are crafting all of these together and deciding on them together, and that's just not the case. But the agreement would be this plan, this aspect is important for both of us. We should take it seriously and we should do it well. That's the agreement. So these agreements and these commitments are who it's for, what it's not for, and how to go about making. So first, let's start with the three circles and sobriety plan. What is that? It's a comprehensive sobriety and recovery plan. It lists behaviors, observable, measurable, um, and list them on the three circles plan. List them on three different tiers. Your center circle, if you imagine like a bullseye, is relapse. Then your next circle out from that, the middle circle. These are circles that require a boundaried response. Think of a yellow light on a traffic light. It means at the very least slow down and make a careful choice. If not, stop altogether and reroute. And then the outer circle is what we are committed to in our recovery, behaviors, attitudes, relationships that strengthen our connection to ourselves and others and our recovery. So, who is the three circle sobriety plan for? The three circle sobriety plan is for the addicted person who really wants to change and become sober. If this tool is used to placate or to perform, it is an abuse of the tool. If this tool is used as, and this is what I commonly see with couples, the three circles recovery plan becomes like the arc that the entire future of both parties relies on. And I don't think that's a good use of it. I think there's a better use of that. So I'll see a lot, and this is actually what sparked this is reworking some three circles plans with some of my long-term clients and us recognizing there's a lot of what your relationship needs that's in this plan, which is not what your sobriety is about. They're different things. So um, it's if you are using this out of a place of placating, if you're using this out of a place of performance, and it's not really about these are the changes that must happen in me, you're going to create problems for yourself and others down the road. So this is only a plan for me to get well. What it should accomplish, your three circles plan should set clear boundaries, bottom lines that are behavior observable and measurable. They should clearly identify behaviors, thoughts, and patterns that, while they are not relapse, are concerning for future stability. That's that middle circle, the yellow circle, like fantasy, lying, etc. And it should make accountability lines clear It should cut down on any need or temptation to litigate. Well, I'm not quite sure where this is at. Like, it should be robust, really well thought through, so that to think about it as like putting yourself on a map. This is not the scorecard. How well am I doing? It's where am I at on the map, because where I'm at says a lot about what I need to do to get to where I want to go. That's all it is. It's not a rubric to tell you whether you're succeeding or failing. Think about it maybe as like a decision tree. It helps you quickly identify how stable your sobriety and recovery are. And it should outline or help you identify some remediating actions to take when you are in the middle or the center circles. So Dr. Rob talks about the green circle as not only are here's my recovery enhancing behaviors, contact with a sponsor, working a program, phone calls, exercise, things like that, but also promises that you want recovery to fulfill in your life. Statements of hope, affirmations. And the way I look at that green circle is you should have things in your green circle that address the change that needs to happen in you when you find yourself in a yellow circle or a red circle. So it's this cohesive plan at a glance. I can put myself on the map, and I can also know if I find myself in yellow or red, here's some green stuff I need to do. That's what your three circle sobriety should accomplish. What it is not for, your sobriety plan is not the path to safety in your relationship. That's not what it's for. It is an important component of safety. In fact, I would say to any betrayed partners out there, if your partner's recovery and sobriety is not a factor for you in whether or not you're safe with this person, go back to the drawing board. So it's important, but that's not the same thing. Um, sorry, I lost my plate here. It is not designed to handle your partner's concerns for safety. Again, you would hope that you're acting out behaviors as far as that goes with safety. You would hope that that is addressed in the plan, and I'll go over that in just a minute. It's to handle what the addict needs to get their head around, to become honest about and accountable to. So the three circle sobriety plan is for the addict's recovery and wellness. And the impact it has on the partner is, if it's a good plan, this person will get sober and become accountable. If it's not, again, I go back to what I said at the first. If you're not committed to really changing your life, no holds barred, I'll do whatever it takes. Maybe don't say that that's what you're doing. If you're going to litigate everything, call it indecision, call it the pre-contemplation phase. Don't call it recovery, because it's not. It's not a legalistic document that helps you edge. So this is not something that helps you split hairs, justify bad behavior. You get real in this, you get accountable, you get honest with yourself. If you aren't thinking I have to do whatever it takes to get well, nothing is off the table, then you aren't ready for recovery. You still have some decisions to make. Um, like for example, the path to safety for the partner, I'll often see as part of a three circles plan. It is a red circle or a yellow circle for me if I'm noticing other women or talking to other women. Now, those are really broad terms and really broad behaviors. Like if you go through a drive-through window and the person that's helping you is female, are you supposed to like look over here and not talk to them? So it's really, really broad. If that is how you are measuring your recovery and sobriety because your partner is primarily concerned about what happens when you interact with women, you may take your eye off the prize and you may focus on something that, while it's relevant for your partner and may be helpful for your partner, may just be a giant headache and a point of contention and resentment for you, which is not helpful for your recovery. In a minute here, we're going to talk about the safety plan. I think it's 100% inbounds for a partner to say to their addicted counterpart, hey, it's really triggering, it's really dangerous for me to think about friendships that you carry on with other women. I want you to stop that. I don't want you to have close friendships with women. But I never acted out with a woman. It doesn't matter. It's not about your sobriety. It's about safety. You see, this is why it's important to delineate this, because if you make the three circles plan the arc that's supposed to carry the safety and the relationship agreements, It will break down all the time. You're not going to take it seriously. You're not going to use it. So how do I make this agreement? How do I make a three-circle sobriety plan? First, you should draft with a sponsor and a therapist, work it, rework it, challenge it, think through different scenarios. This is not something you should sit down in an afternoon and just write out and say, checkbox done. Like you should be thinking through, um, if fantasy shows up there somewhere, why exactly is fantasy a problem for me? How do I know that I'm fantasizing? What should I do instead? It's not one of those elementary school exercises where you draw a line between the word and the group it goes in. This isn't a test. This is a document that represents you and what you need. Then it should be presented to interested parties. Your group should know, your 12-step group should know, your sponsor should know, um, your partner, if they want to know what is on your three circles plan, should know. And you should take feedback on that. So oftentimes, a partner who's been betrayed, they may know quite a bit about what the acting out behaviors have been because of disclosures, because of discovering secrets, things like that. So the presenting it to interested parties is to check your work. It's not to, does this work for you? Because remember, your three circles plan is not for your partner, it's for you. So you take feedback. Hey, you don't have listed on here at all um, chat apps. I mean, this is going to date me. Chat rooms, web boards. Like you don't have on there anything, and you acted out all the time in there. Oh, this is the spirit that should be in. Thank you so much. I'm taking this back to the drawing board. I will include that. You're right. That has been a problem for me. Um, if there's any feedback you're getting, you're saying, well, that was an occasional thing. Like again, that's not a I'll do whatever it takes attitude. I don't care if it's only one time that you downloaded a dating app and swiped through. That is a liability. If you did it once, it's easier for you to do it again. If you're taking this seriously, I'm crossing every T, I'm dotting every I, I'm leaving nothing to chance, is the three circles. Um, so questions or concerns a partner has about your behavior in your three circles plan should be taken back to your therapist and your sponsor and worked. Questions that your therapist and sponsor might ask you are like, why do you think your partner's so concerned with that? And if you're coming up with some answer about how uptight your partner is, I'm sorry, you're not earnest about your recovery. You really have to think about it. Why might they think that that's a problem? Why might they want me to address that? And then you determine where it goes. You may come back to your partner and you may say, you know what, honey, I totally understand why you want me to pay attention to that. I think that that's a good fit on the safety plan. Let's put that on the safety plan. I will do that for your safety. That's why I'm committing to it. I'm not going to put it on my three circles plan because that doesn't really fit with my sobriety, but this is where I'll put it. And I would also say the three circle sobriety plan is not like the penultimate thing. And a lot of addicts and their partners see it as this is the thing we've got to get perfect. No, there's three legs to this stool. So to say I'm going to move it from the three circles column to I think we should have this in the safety plan is not to demote it. It's just as important. But we're getting clear about why that agreement is in place. So again, three circles is based on behavior, not fears, not potential. So the next agreement would be the safety plan, agreements needed for safety and eventual rebuilding of trust. Now, what this is, these are requests, I would say demands, standards that a betrayed partner needs to see fulfilled in order to consider trusting again, in order to consider whether or not trusting again would be safe for them. I put demands on there because definitely you cannot relapse. I cannot go through another one. I will not go through another one. For an addicted person, whether you feel like that's fair to you or not, your partner has a right. They know what that heartache feels like. If I don't have another one in me, I can't pretend that I do. So there can be demands, there can be hard lines. Um, that is less about controlling. This is where when that stuff ends up on a three circles, I think it feels like control, and I think it kind of is when it's on my safety requests. No, it's not control. I'm telling you, you must be this tall to ride this ride. You've got to figure this out, or there's not a lot of reason for me to continue in a relationship with you. Who it's for the partner who's been betrayed. Again, the attitude is this is what I must see from you in order to consider continuing this relationship. Or if I don't see the following changes, I'd be foolish to consider trusting you again. So it's actually a statement of empowerment for the partner. It's a statement of it's not taking back control. It's saying in order for this to work, I have to be in charge of the safe space around me. I'm not outsourcing that to you anymore. And I would say this, if you had it outsourced and there was never betrayal, that was a mistake. Your safety is your primary concern. You are in charge of knowing what's best for you. Don't outsource that to anyone for any reason. So the change for a lot of couples in recovery is not because you messed up, I'm not relying on you for safety. It's I always had the wrong idea about this. Safety comes from what I know I need to do, and I don't compromise on that. Recovery teaches us that safety is too important to compromise on it. What it should accomplish, it should clearly define behaviors and shifts that must occur, given that there has been secrecy, abuse, and dangerous behavior towards the partner. So, for example, if you are cheating on your partner sexually, you could bring home disease. You could cripple and compromise your partner's health for the rest of their life. It's not just it was this one time. No, there's real consequences that you were messing with and your partner did not know they're growing up. That's a serious breach. So for the addict, this request for safety, this safety plan, this is part of what helps you. It sets the standard. If I don't understand why my partner is asking for this, I've got some work to do. Because this isn't a matter of, oh, I don't see that as a problem or you didn't get hurt. So that lacks empathy and that gets to be your task now. So for the addicted person, you don't have to love the safety plan. If you want the relationship, you do have to do it. You have to figure out how to make that important to you. And that can be part of what actually builds empathy. And so what I'll see sometimes is I'll see partners who will slice it so thin what they need. They'll make the minimum ask, they'll make the ask for safety so low. It's almost like they're doing their partner's homework and there's no change there. So it is okay. Just like a three circles plan, if your three circles plan challenges your partner, but what about, I think you should. There might be an element of control out of fear that your partner might need to work on. Just like if your partner is presenting with a safety plan, you're saying, I don't get it. Why is this important? There's some work for you to do to build some empathy, to take on some perspective, to get more relational. Which, by the way, becoming relational is not a natural outgrowth of getting sober. I know lots of sober people who are terrible partners and are bad at relationships, but they are stone cold sober. They are not the same thing. They're different animals. They have to be worked on separately, differently. Um, so this provides a standard so that both parties can become accountable to and measure progress for restoring dignity and safety in the relationship. So at first, those of you who struggle with addiction, your partner's request for safety may not make sense to you and you may hate them. It would be fantastic for your recovery if you worked to wrap your head and heart around it and then you became the world's biggest champion for what your partner's asking for, not because they asked for it, but because you internalized it. That would be a huge step forward in relationship progress. And again, not something that your three circles plan gets you. So you need this second leg of the stool. For a partner to become empowered, to stay focused on your partner's recovery and getting that right and not having concern for yourself, that will never empower you. So the outgrowth of a good safety plan is you get to have a voice, you get to practice having a voice and not being scared of that anymore. And you're going to walk taller and you're going to feel more confident and you're going to hold on to the power that you have in a relationship. So what the safety plan is not for, it's not a recovery or sobriety plan. Again, I know a lot of stone cold sober people who are terrible partners. Technical sobriety and recovery don't require an empathetic awakening for your partner. You might get it for the rest of humanity. You may not get it for your partner because that's not what it's focused on. Um, also, think about there can be barriers to empathy or difficulties to empathy if your partner is somewhere on like an autism spectrum or something like that. If there's trauma, if there's brain injury. So to make it a one size fits all, or to have the expectation if you get sober you will be empathetic, you'll likely be disappointed. That doesn't mean that it's hopeless. There's just a better way to do it. um Let me see. Sorry, I've been thinking about this for 2 whole months, so I have so many notes here, and I'm getting ahead of my self here. I talked about the example of looking at other women. Again, that is a good relationship request. I can't deal. It's destabilizing for me. I feel like I have to play defense. If for the time being I knew that you were taking that off the table, it would help me tremendously. Do you want to help me or not? Um, let's see. The request is about the partner and their safety. And it's a yes or no response. This is not a negotiation thing. Well, I don't think you need that. To you who struggle with addiction out there and who are struggling with this, I will say to you very clearly, don't gaslight your partner by saying, I don't think you need that. It doesn't make sense. It is for you to say yes or no to. The third column would be, I don't get it. I'll work on that. I will work on understanding why you're asking for this. Um, let's see. How do you
Before you
make,
go
yes,
on that one, I have a question because because you said noticing, like you used the example of like you're not noticing women, and I'm like, but if I'm going through the drive-through and the person helping is a female, what like to me it's almost like, can I ask for can you clarify
thank
for
you.
me what you're asking? Because
Thank
yes,
you.
I'm going to notice that person is female, but
Yep.
I'm not like gawking at them.
Perfect. My text is small and unorganized because I brain dumped this morning and didn't have a chance to clean it up. That is one of the things. So it's a yes, a no. I have to wrap my head around that. Or can we talk so I understand what you're asking for? And it is in bounds to game plan together. So to say for the drive-through example, there may be some people out there who would say, well, then you need to back up and get out of that drive-through. And I think that's a different issue than sobriety and recovery that we're talking about. But to say like, here's how I will handle interactions with the opposite sex. I will make no small talk. I will be professional. I will use the least amount of words needed to get the transaction done. You can count on that from me. And should noticing trigger any kind of lust in me or any kind of thinking, I will be on the phone call with a sponsor or someone from my program to surrender that and process that. So again, in all of these, don't be surprised when your definition and your expectation does not match what this means for your partner, because you're two different people and definitions are not universal. So you do have to talk. What exactly are you expecting? How
Yeah.
are we going to keep this agreement?
Yeah, yeah, because to me, I was going like, what does anything that is arbitrary, like that where there's
Yeah.
nuances, I'm like, the partner probably has a pretty clear envisionment for what
Yes.
that is, and the addict partner is going like, well, I didn't really notice them. I mean,
This
it's that latitude is an issue.
this is one of my cases for early recovery couples work, meaning that it's not about like necessarily healing our relationships, but to have these like, what do you mean? Let's road test this. Let's make sure that we have a good agreement. Like that's not something that a lot of people do naturally, and certainly not in early phases of recovery, but it's absolutely necessary. So when you have a relationship therapist who understands we may not be, working on building warmth and healing the relationship, but this whole like these two people have to live together peaceably and know how to make agreements and communicate effectively. Like there's so much that early marital therapy in recovery can help with, and this is one of those. Let's make sure we have our agreements down. So how do you make this? A partner and their therapist and sponsor or guides should consider what is broken, distorted, hidden, and think of benchmarks that will be expected and looked for. When you're not hiding money or secrets, etc., from me, that may be an indication that you're interested in being a person who I could consider trusting. So it's not, and sometimes I'll see partners have a really hard time with like pinning down what exactly is they're looking for, because they'll say something like, well, so when he does this one thing, am I just supposed to trust him? No, no, this isn't a transaction. So you have to make some benchmarks, and you may discover as you set some benchmarks and you guys are working, you may discover more. So this isn't a day one thing you have to have figured out. It's that relational aspect of trust. There's things that I need to be able to see, feel, concerns I have addressed. I had a couple that I worked with, and her line, I loved it. She said, "I need a restoration of dignity." And
Mhm.
that totally superseded his three circles plan because he could be sober. Again, he was really bad at relationships. And so as they talked about what dignity was, they eventually found a path where she could get that restoration. She could feel it, he could feel it. They were both playing a role, and it was empowering for both of them. Um, so these agreements, so when you present these agreements or agreements, when you present these requests that you've made, it should be in the spirit of, in order to consider continuing a relationship with you or to consider trusting you again, I will need to see the following. This requires a yes or no response. There's no need to negotiate, but there may be a need to clarify deeply what is being asked for so that you have calibrated measuring sticks. I know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. Now we can help each other. So last, I know this is going on longer than usual, but like I said, I've been so excited
It's
about
great
this
stuff.
for two
It's great
months.
stuff. Yeah.
Relationship agreements. These are commitments made by two equal adults in a relationship by choice with consent. And we understand that what we agree to builds the nature of our relationship. So I've said this before here, relationships are made up. They don't exist by themselves. So they don't have a nature all their own. There is kind of a like lowest common denominator. There's the path of least resistance that relationships will flow into if we're not deliberate about it. So if you want a relationship that's easy and not hard, that's by design. You aren't going to just find someone that it's easy to be with. You have to design a relationship. So who are our relationships agreement for? These are for both partners to ensure that their relationship encompasses everything that's wonderful and important to them and clearly marks as out of bounds anything that is harmful, unsafe, unequal, or uncaring. So this is for us to set inbounds, out of bounds, and you can't have separate relationship agreements. That's one person thinking. I would call that a relationship of entitlement. Well, I want blah, 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 and I want blah, blah, blah. No, together, we, what is it that we will do to ensure the best future possible? Now, this one, like all of them, you can tell if you're very early in the stage of recovery, you may be hearing what I'm saying and saying, "Well, that's impossible," and you may have a lot of counters to that. This requires some growing and maturing. These agreements, these commitments should challenge you. If they don't, it's easy. You don't need them, or you're focused in the wrong place. So there is some challenge that we thinking. How are we going to do this? What your relationships agreement should accomplish, they should give both partners confidence that when mistakes are made, there can be a quick repair because we both understand what we're committed to, what this relationship needs to be about, what works for our relationship. And we aren't debating policy each time. I don't owe you an apology, you blah, blah, blah. No, you're right. I violated 1, 3, and 6. I'm sorry, you have my apology. I don't have a leg to stand on. I will fix it. I'll make it better. Um, we know the rules of the road and we show that we're serious with them. That is one of the ways that you demonstrate you're trustworthy as a partner. I can't do whatever I want here. I can't let you do whatever you want here. We live together, and we have to talk to each other about what works and what doesn't work. It should provide paths to restoration of integrity for both parties when injury happens. So if we know clearly what's inbounds and out of bounds, apology becomes really easy. I'm sorry, I was mad is no excuse. We did say we weren't going to talk to each other that way. I know I can't do that. I know there's no excuse. Um, it can happen clearly, quickly, and without reservation because we know inbounds and out of bounds repair is relatively easy, and we can both tell when it's happening. So when there's that realignment with the relationship, because we care about each other, we always do this, or we never do that. But by the way, when you make these agreements, the positive "we should" is more helpful than the "we shouldn't." So it's to focus on where we're
That
going.
makes sense.
What it's not for, it's not one-sided leverage, it's not covert control, and it's not compromise. This is not transactional. You don't make relationship agreements that you can stay up all hours of the night playing video games just as long as I don't have to lift a finger to clean the house. Like this is
Mm.
not a transaction. This is again think about like building a fence around a yard so that you can keep the little things inside of it that you love safe. It's that. It's defining the perimeter of the relationship. Um, how we make these agreements. So you start by together, you think of everything that each of you wants, yearns for, is important to you in a relationship. And then you think of the things that hurt, embarrass, discourage, or kill collaboration. So here's everything that I want. Here's the stuff I want to stay away from. And then you start thinking of what's the type of relationship that maximizes benefit and avoids harm really well, easily, solidly. And then you start crafting statements. In this relationship, we always. So, for example, we always greet each other with good cheer. We always apologize quickly. We always attend to one another's distress. We put each other first. Um, the shorter and the more action based these we always statements are, the more powerful they are. And then you workshop these statements until both of you feel great about it. So this is not turn taking. It's not like picking teams for volleyball. Okay, you get to pick the first agreement and then I get to pick the second one. That's one person thinking, that's not collaborative. It's no, no, no. We always, whatever statement we come up with, it's got a lot of fire in both of us that burns brighter than our anger, our tiredness, our depression, and our laziness. Because it's these agreements that separate us from the old what's the word I'm saying the old unevolved beings that we were. What separates us from the animals?
Neanderthals.
Yeah, yeah. We aren't just going to do this relationship based on what we feel. It has real parameters. It has real needs, and we take that seriously. So that is I would say, the three agreements of early recovery. We can take questions now. I hope you can see where each serves a distinct purpose and why it's important to have those distinct from each other and not blend it all into one.
So I have a couple questions because you just said the last one, it's not compromise, but I'm so like, I love to travel. Perhaps my spouse does not like to travel or we don't travel. Wouldn't there be some elements of compromise of like, okay, like this is a really big deal to you. It's not as big of a deal to me, but I'm willing to do that for a
Yeah.
relationship agreement?
Yeah, I call it negotiation, and it's a dumb semantics thing, but compromise has us focused on what we're losing.
Oh, okay.
Negotiation is looking at what we can bring to the table that's attractive
Okay.
to each other, and that's not the same as transaction. So to say, like for example, my spouse and I had to do this at the beginning of our marriage. Her family's idea of vacations when we first got married was trips. Like no joke, they planned this trip to Vancouver, which was going to be awesome, but they had it planned down to the minute.
Oh,
And I was
oh.
looking at that and I was like, I'm overwhelmed by this. I don't know how well I'm going to do. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go. Um, but that was something she and I had to talk about. She said, travel's really important to me. And I said, I love travel. I love seeing stuff, but I want to travel to relax. So we found our own rhythm with that. We decide to this day when we're going to take a trip or do a vacation, we say, is this a go see things or is this a go relax? And we figure that out together. So compromise, I think, really quickly has us arriving at like, okay, I won't do this, and I guess I'll get this. Whereas negotiation, I think, is a little bit of a mindset shift, and it's we're going to work hard and be creative, think outside the box to make this really good for both of us. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think of it as navigating the space,
Yeah.
because it's that gap in between. So, and then one more thing before we get to the questions, because you talked about the three circle plan, and to me, that is I think probably all of these are living documents because things shift and change along the way. And, you go, oh, like we could update that, or like, you're dealing with young children. So there's some certain things in the relationship thing, but now they're all grown up or whatever it is. But with the three circle plan, I often think particularly the outer circle hopefully is growing because you're gaining new interests and new ideas on how to do that. So having the idea of this is not a one and done, probably on any of these, but and safety may change along the way, or either needing more or losing whatever. But I like the idea of thinking of this as I don't have to get it perfectly now. I'm
Yep.
going to look at this, and as things come up, or I become aware of, then I'm going to address that and find out where things need to go.
Yeah, because relationships happen out here, they don't happen in here. So you are on all of these, you're making your best guess about what would work with you, but every interaction you have changes you, it gives you new insight. So yeah, these are living, they're living, not fungible. We don't throw it out the window just because we got, different, like you keep working at it until you refine it down to, okay, I think we kind of understand what this is about. When I'm lost, I can look at this and I can reorient myself really well. But it's very much made organically through a lot of experience, trial and error. Um, yeah,
Trial and error. Well, and one more thing, and then I promise. But like when you said that, yes, I violated, number one, three, and six, and I said we wouldn't do that, and it was like this really calm. Yep, I own it. It
yeah,
wasn't like, well, I was so tired, and you did not. Like there's no defensive-ness in this. Is I own it. I apologize, and I'm going to work
yeah.
on not doing that again.
Well, because if we have a relationship that really has the potential to be the best thing that we invest in life, which is, I would say, a really good, compelling reason to work hard in a relationship. If we get this right, could you imagine? If we have a relationship that's really not, like, why would we mess around with the parameters? Like, think of a car that my buddy was telling me the other day. He let a family member borrow his truck, and they put regular, not diesel, in the truck. And fortunately, they caught it before they left the pump. But that's one of those, like, what are you going to do? Argue with the fuel in the tank and be like, well, you should work, and you don't. No, no, there's parameters, and you accept it quickly, you deal with the consequences, and you move on. This family member of my buddy, not negotiating with that, but calling directly and saying, I just made a huge mistake. I put the wrong kind of gas in your truck. And he said, don't start it, don't move it. I'm calling a tow truck. Like, we'll get it in. And I mean, it cost
In
to
the
get
tank. Yeah.
it cost to get the tank drained, but it didn't cost him a whole truck.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay, first question, addict partner here. How do you recommend developing the safety plan? Is it all my wife being the driver decider of what she needs? I run into this issue. My wife's expectations that I will know what she needs to feel safe and implement safety boundaries accordingly without input from her, giving her the chance to say, I don't need it to be that strict. She doesn't want to make it explicit what she needs because of the concern I will get resentful or go to the line. This has been hard. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually see that on both sides of the addict and the betrayed partner equation. Generally, both parties have struggled for a long time with self-activation. It's a scary part of growing up and being an adult. Because once you put a flag in the ground and you say, this is what I want, this is what I need, it becomes real, and there can be some terror that comes up. There can be some chance for some letdown. So I think in this, I really appreciate the tone of this question. And I think some things that, if you find yourself in this kind of situation, some things that you can try is, honey, I think we've proven I'm a terrible mind reader. And I actually don't think I'm going to get any better, not because I don't want to, but like, I really want your help. It's important to me. I want to know what's important to you. I want to know what you need. And if you don't know, or if it scares you, that's okay. Like, we can work with that. But this, like, And when I go back to like how a relationship works, the tenets of democracy are not that we silence differing viewpoints. It's that we get them out there and we talk about them. And secure functioning relationships are democratic, meaning it's governed for the people by the people. We talk about things. And so there can be an imbalance. And I hear this a lot of times from couples that I work with. If I have to tell you what I need, then doesn't that make it not come out of love?
Mhm.
And I think that's maybe an immature view of what love is. I get it. When we're kids and we can't talk and we can't know, like, yeah, we really rely on people intuiting and guessing right and getting it right for us. I would ask, is it not a greater act of love when your partner comes to you and you say, you know what, this wasn't even on my radar before. I didn't think this way. It doesn't make sense to me, but because you're saying it's important, it's now important to me. So there's growing up for all of us in this, and I would look at I would encourage you to look at kind of that patient. Don't be derogatory, don't be demeaning, but just that patient. Like I'm a terrible mind reader. I don't think I'll get any better at it. I want to know you better. This is the way that I can. If there's any fear you have, and speaking what you need, if you don't know, like we can start there for sure. But I want to know what's inside of you.
Yeah, and I just see that as empowering to both people if they're, I mean, it's a real vulnerability to be willing to, talk about that and share things. And I'm thinking, for me, it's important if I have a request, it's important for me to make that request, and what somebody does with it, is entirely up to them. But I'm at least clear on what I'm looking for, in that moment, and whether my need gets met or not, I at least know what it is I'm looking for. So to me, that's important from my standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the workbook for partners facing heartbreak, I love their boundary response plan to safety because they have you come up with like 3 or 4 potential responses. So I'm looking at this line here that says like I don't need it to be that strict. Something that you've asked for that doesn't happen doesn't necessarily require like off with his head.
Yeah.
It could be at a minimum, I'm going to remind you. That's a boundary. That's a
Hmm.
response. Um, it could be we're going to need to go back to the drawing board and kind of have another talk about this because it is important to me that you get this and I want to understand why you're not. So it doesn't have to be this is again that relationship agreement. We make those so that it does not have to be DEFCON 1 every time a hurt happens or things are broken. We have safety, we have structure. When we know that the game here is I don't know, I can intuit you. I'm not good at that. When we know that that's the game, now the feedback mechanism isn't about failing. It's actually what sets us up to succeed.
Yeah. Well, and to your point too, it's like, you said it, I was like, oh, there's some Dr. Stan Tech. And, like we together, in a good, healthy relationship are individually healthy or happy or like all the good things. And I'm often sharing with, what is your goal? Like, why would we not want that to be the goal rather than we're just going to tough out, this relationship no matter what?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question um, is covert control. When is an ultimatum okay? When is it a non-negotiable? When are we as addicts controlled rather than requests being made? Can you talk to this? Like using boundaries to control people. Well, boundaries aren't, that wouldn't be a boundary. That would be just control. So boundaries
Right.
are for my safety. And I'm going to ask, and if you're unable to do that, then and it's the consequences for me, but it's not control or punishment. So can you speak to this
Yeah.
though?
So I'm going to kind of deconstruct this phrase by phrase.
Please.
So requests made. Think about it this way. If our relationship is a culture of request, but my answer to you is always no, what's my problem? Like how is that going to work for a relationship long term? So whether you call it a request or you call it a demand or you call it a bottom line, I think the response should be kind of in the same neighborhood, which is first, it's a yes or no answer. I am interested, I'm not interested. Is let me make sure I understand exactly what you are asking for. Let me make sure I understand what you need. We clarify terms, and then it's a yes or a no again. And you're either serious about taking your partner seriously or you're not. So to call it a request is not, oh, this is optional for me. There can be relationship consequences from, again, a range. It might be a mild annoyance. It might be, well, I thought it was a long shot, but I thought I'd ask anyway. And it could be all the way up to deal breaker. Um, the other part, to Tammy's point, boundaries are not used to control people. The way I look at boundaries, if you cannot accomplish it all by yourself without collaboration, then it's not a boundary you have. It's a dependency, which is not a four-letter word. It's a dependency you have on somebody else, and you have to own that. But to say it's my boundary when it's really not a boundary, I have no ability or intention of fulfilling this myself, then that's a misuse of the word boundary. Um, when is an ultimatum okay? Well, when you mean it. When is it a non-negotiable? When you're really done negotiating. So I say to folks all the time, if your partner says do this or I will divorce you, don't play around with that. Meaning treat it like for what it is. So if that makes you mad and you say, listen, if that's the hill we die on, that's the hill we're dying on. It's the same thing when I'm working with folks who are they threaten suicide or self-harm, but they don't really mean it. I don't sit around and assess whether or not they really mean it. I make a call. I get them safe. I've been on the phone with clients before. Well, I've been on the phone with the police at the same time saying, I need you to go to this person's home because they're threatening to hurt themselves. So again, if it's a threat to end the relationship, don't play chicken with it. Take it for what it is. If that's really what you mean, then I'm either going forward with this or I'm saying, you know what? No, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. And I guess we've reached the end of the line here. So ultimatums are okay and non-negotiables are okay if you mean it. If you're really saying, I can't do this anymore, get into therapy, make some progress. You've got 6 months or I'm gone. Don't threaten that if you don't mean it. And if your partner is saying that over and over again, you might want to consider, why does my partner use this language to ask things of me? Are they under the impression that unless a gun is to my head, I won't do anything? And if so, whose problem is that? Or I should say it this way: what's my part in that? That my partner uses this extemporaneous language to get me to do things. Maybe I need to look at my sincerity of being a good partner, or maybe I'm just in this relationship for my own benefit, and I really don't care what's going on the other side of things. That's how I would answer that one.
Okay. And then the next one, do you find that many of the men you work with are neurodivergent? And can you explain how you work with those clients?
Um, Neurodivergence kind of a hot topic right now. And like most topics that become popular, there's a pop psychology version of it, and then there's a good clinical version of it. So I see a lot of things that can look like neurodivergence or make me wonder if I'm gathering evidence and I'm thinking like this could be autism or this could be some kind of neurodivergent, I'm referring to someone who assesses that. I don't. Like, I'm not qualified to do that. So I want a good neuropsych assessment, not just going on a hunch. That's what I want to figure out first. Um, this isn't one of those things that I think you self-identify with. like
Or Dr.
this is
Google?
yeah, or Dr.
Yeah.
Google. This is really something like it's diagnosable, it's detectable, and it's not a disease. It's not a disease, or a death sentence. It's a legitimate difference in how the brain structures are built, how they're organized, and how they work together. Um, so that is the big thing that I'm doing when I'm working with people is if it's their diagnosis, first I want to empower. Let's learn about this. Let's learn what it is. Let's learn what it's not. I was thinking about someone I worked with a while ago that had some real big structural differences in their brain. And the first thing that he and I did was we started learning about the function of this brain structure that he didn't have, and then we also started looking at, the literature on this would say people who have this condition can't recognize emotion, they can't blah 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 down the road. Instead of accepting that, we tested all of it. So I'd actually have his partner in and we would play games. I would write an emotion on my tablet. I would show it to his partner. He couldn't see it. And I would say, make the face. And she would do it. And it took him longer than his partner doing the same thing. It took him longer, but he was 100% accurate. So even then, we looked at what Google and the literature was saying, and he was saying, I fit some of this, but not all of it. Like, and it was really helpful for his partner too to see like, oh, that delay, I've always chalked that up to unwillingness. And now I understand it because he can do it. It just takes a long time. I chalk that up to laziness. And we talked about like, I think his brain literally has to reroute. I think it's a longer route because he doesn't have that brain structure that shoots it right across the hemisphere. So um, it's it's a real thing with real consequences. I would put it this way: the world is not built for neurodivergent people by neurodivergent people. So the world we've created is a hard one to live in. So we look at some of those differences and we look at what can be done for you so that you can get along better. And for a lot of neurodivergent people, there's a lot of relief when they learn and they can say this is me, and they stop masking, which is behaviors that are, I can really like pull it. I can act like I'm not struggling here, but that takes so much energy. When I can just own, hey, I don't see faces clearly, or this is not neurodivergence, but an example of owning a deficit. I tell new clients because it's true. I say I'm in the wrong business for being really bad with names. I am going to figure out your name, even though I have it written right here in front of me. I'm so sorry. I will work on that. And again, it's one of those relationship agreements. I think it's important that your therapist knows your name. I agree with that. So when I don't do that, I don't make excuses. I don't say you misheard me. I don't miss it. I'm so sorry. And I write out their name 10 times on my tablet so that I get it in my head more. So there's accommodations and there's changes that can be made in how the person approaches the world. Expectations changed, not giving up expectations and things we need. But again, this guy that recognizing emotions, give him about 3 times longer than you think is necessary and he'll make it. And he did, like almost every time.
Yeah, and to me, that's part of all of this work is finding out what works for you. I think even with the 12-step program, this is a suggested program of a recovery, but there's all of these different ways that you do this stuff. And, some people are really visual. Some people are, I'm what auditory, whatever, so however you learn, finding what works for you. But I think it is really helpful for the relationship for both people, to understand what the so-called diagnosis is, but learn to find things that work so that it's creating an opportunity for success. I haven't seen anybody like I had one guy a while ago. He was like, it was kind of well, like, and he was severely ADHD. Like it was, painfully obvious. But I was like, well, that just means you have to find the tools that work for you. It doesn't give you a pass on doing the recovery work. You just have to figure out your systems so that you can remember to do your homework. You can remember, like you have calendar reminder, whatever it is, you have to find what's going to work for you to be successful with it. It isn't, hopeless. He adds autistic is what I'm asking about. How do you work with men with autism who are officially? And then it says, I appreciate late how respectfully you talk about autism. And that, I mean, that is just one thing. He talked about traumatic brain injuries, and there's so many things that are co-occurring or in combination with sex addiction and recovery, and whether it's sex and porn addiction or any kind of addiction, compulsive behavior, because that's an easy place to escape to have that be the safe coping mechanism. So understanding that uh, for all of us, we're coming into it with some deficiencies, emotionally very immature. You like when you're talking about holding up I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I needed the little, and you talked about it before with your family too. It's like you point to the face and of the emotions. I was like, I needed that, early on because I couldn't figure out any of that stuff, So we all have our vulnerabilities, that we come into this with. Other questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna go look at my notes because okay, yeah, I outline. Since there's not another question. As a component of safety is not designed to handle your partner's concerns for safety. You were talking about the three circle plan, and I was thinking, oh, every partner on here is going, oh no, because they're holding that space, thinking that, well, if he's
Yeah.
got a three, he's not doing his inner circle behaviors. I'm using pronouns, and he's not doing his inner circle, so I must be safe. So can you elaborate on that since we got into
Yeah.
that?
The image that comes to mind is like, a wrench can be an effective hammer until it breaks because it's not designed to do that. And so again, I think there's some empowerment that can be really uh authentically, empathetically, it can be really scary for partners to come forward and say, whether this is a concern for you or not, I don't care why you do this. It's terrifying for me. And I would expand, this is not exactly what I'd say to your partner, but this is what's going on. In the context of my entire world being turned upside down and my nervous system, like I'm just one big raw nerve right now. I really don't care. And I don't need to tag this to you do this, therefore it's a problem. No, I'm saying it's too much for me. Can you help me out for now? That's really scary. That can even feel dangerous. That can feel wrong. But I would say, from like a developmental standpoint, that's kind of how you have to challenge yourself as a partner is this is where I need to get to, that I can speak clearly about what I need. I can have confidence in opening my mouth, not because everyone's going to do what I want, because once I say it and I say I'm committed to this, I'm going to be committed to it. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen, whether I get help or not. Um, that's that's where we're shooting for. That's part of your restoration of dignity. That's part of your coming together as a whole person again and being strong and safe and sound again. And it's scary, just like for an addict to think about. I'm not going to have porn. Like what am I going to do when I feel bad? What am I going to do when I feel horny? Like it's scary what we're giving up, but there's that leap of faith. And when you take away the scaffolding, when you take away the support from the addiction or the underactivation, you grow. And that's what needs to be able to happen here. So, and that's part of the growth is saying your sobriety is your thing. I need you to be sober, but you have to figure that out. I can't do it for you. Now, anything else that's a concern for me, it's totally in bounds to say that that's unsafe for me. I want your help. We need to figure out a way that I don't have to worry about what's going on here, here, and here because we have a plan. I need that. I'm on high alert. Help me out here.
And I feel like, I mean, all three of these are really important. And like you said, the three legs of a stool, but like, okay, what's going to be good for our relationship? What do we want for our relationship? And the sobriety plan, the safety plan are going to help us,
Mm-hmm.
optimize our relationship. So, okay, we're done. We're out of time. Thank you. This is great. And like I can imagine you have even more notes. So great topic and really helpful. For those of you joining, we won't be here, Christmas Day or New Year's Day, but we'll be back on this in January. So happy
See you
holidays
then.
to you and your family.
You too, Tammy.
Thank
Bye.
you.